Welcome to the BroPolar podcast. Why are you laughing already?
I was just trying to let you think that I was going to interrupt your
No more echoes this time.
Yeah, I got
we're not
scolded.
doing that anymore. I didn't scold you. I'm not your father. We've got a really interesting topic today that Nick's going to dive into here in a little bit, and that time is right now.
I think they're just bummed that you're not doing the lead so that I can interject with all the great humor.
So you want, today I'm not doing the lead. Actually, Nick's doing the lead on the research and our topic today, which is
the Boston Molasses flood.
Yeah.
And it's exactly how it sounds.
It's quite insane that something like that could happen.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, like, you don't ever cover this kind of stuff in school, but, like, it was a massive disaster in Boston.
All I think of is slow as molasses.
Yeah, and that's crazy, too, because of how much damage and destruction it did. It's hard to think that that would be caused from a rapidly moving molasses wave rather than
a wave.
Yeah, it's crazy. The story's insane.
A giant wall of molasses.
Literally.
But it's hot molasses. It's not just...
It's not super hot molasses, though.
It wasn't.
No.
We'll get into more of the information in a second. I think, I was thinking the other day when I was looking at your daughter, Luna.
Okay.
And I was thinking at what point do we become self-aware? At what point do we recognize, because we were talking about what's the first memory that you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to like put into like, I guess, you see it kind of like as a puzzle that's like all scrambled up. Like it's hard to like establish exact timelines for stuff. I have like really early memories of things like, and I think I was like probably 4, but,
and that's pretty young. 4 years old to have like a first memory.
Yeah. And the actual memory itself too, it makes sense because like I want to say my earliest memory is burning my arm on a toaster. I was like reaching across to get like jelly, even though mom and dad had just told me not to. And then I seared my arm, similar to how I pressed on the remote to turn on the lights. You
branded yourself.
Yeah, literally just psh.
Yeah. Well, Nick doesn't have the remote today. I do. So we're not going to have any lighting issues.
But I want to say that's probably about the age like I started storing more long-term memory, though.
When you burned yourself and you branded yourself with the toaster?
Yeah, like that like era of time. Because I remember like not too long after like carving pumpkins with you, mom and dad at the table.
You have a really interesting mix of first, and that's probably how it comes, right? You think like kind of almost like a highlight reel.
But that would have been about the age that Luna is now, so she's almost 4.
Right,
so.
And that's exactly what I was saying and thinking. When did, is she self-aware? Does she kind of know of her own existence? And I
feel like it's even earlier though, because I also remember like helping mom taking groceries one time, like one of those little toy John Deere tractors you got to ride on. You just like kind of like scoot or whatever. Maybe it had pedals, I don't remember, but I do specifically remember feeling like the like seat lifted and you could put stuff in it. And I put like mom would let me put in groceries. And now as a parent, I have to think like how painstaking that really was, but mom's a saint, so she would let me like put in a couple groceries into this thing and then I'd like wheel it inside, so like
destroy all the produce and take it inside.
So that's like probably the earliest memory I really have is that. But
I don't really know. I feel like I was a late bloomer as far as self-awareness, because we talk about these stories when we lived in Virginia Beach and I was in kindergarten, and I just don't remember any of it.
And I like vaguely remember putting like coins into dad's new VHS player. I just remember dad like having to take it apart, but I don't remember how old I was. So
yeah, you stuffed you were really into stuffing things into stuff like pizza into that car.
That's a memory I don't remember though, because I was so young.
Yeah, you were like probably 2. Like 1 or 2.
But yeah, mom and dad were so poor at the time. And they had finally like saved enough to have like a pizza party with friends
in college.
And they left, like they were all talking and I got a hold of a pizza and put it into like a little Tykes bus. So just jammed it on in there. So
they scooped it out and ate it anyway though.
Yeah, they do.
Because what else are you going to do? If you spent your budget on food for that whole thing,
Yeah,
you got to eat.
I can't imagine too, like, you finally get the money and like you finally have friends over to do it, and then your kid just smashes the pizza into like a toy. Terrible. That's terrible of me.
Yeah, I think my first was when we were kind of moving to Vermont. I was probably five or
Dang,
six.
dude. Late bloomer.
That I can really... I know, actually. I actually
Late
have that,
memory
I have
bloomer.
That down. Late bloomer.
Late memory bloomer.
I know. I think I remember us moving to Vermont and like clear, distinct memories, because anytime before that, like before I was 5, I don't really remember anything very clear. I don't have any actual memory that's like distinct. So I do remember that. But I also got to thinking about it, like, I remember crawling up the stairs until I was like 17 years old. Like not walking upright. You know what I mean?
No, I have
Like on your hands, like, and I got to the top. I was probably like 16. And I got to the top and I stood there and I was just like, what is wrong with you?
You just crawl up the stairs?
You know what I'm talking about?
No,
like when you go up the stairs and
you're,
like normal people, they walk.
Yeah,
on their
that's
legs
normally how
up the
I've traveled
stairs.
since I've been able to walk.
Okay, stop. But when you're a kid, they use their hands up the stairs.
I have seen it.
I remember getting to the top in my teenage years. At some point, I don't remember the exact year. I do remember getting to the top, standing up and going, looking down, like I just crawled up these stairs, like
Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, no, not quite. Like I used my legs, Nick.
Oh, I thought you said like you army crawl.
I didn't army
stairs.
crawl. I crawled like a bear up the stairs.
Oh,
a lot of people do that. I feel weird about this.
Yeah,
now.
I don't
like
know.
I used a diaper until I was 12 or something.
Maybe we need a new memory.
No, I do remember thinking, okay, that's got to stop, because it was actually harder.
At least you had like the awareness to like socially stop something that would.
I don't know why I was doing it. I don't know how often I was doing that, but it was happening.
I'm gonna assume in my head now it's like every time you use the stairs, you have this like urge.
You're gonna
climb.
find yourself crawling up the stairs just one.
I'm gonna
one
walk
time.
like next time there's stairs. I'm gonna just know
No,
that
think
in your
about it.
head somewhere
Nick,
you're like,
put your hands on the
I desperately
stairs.
want to climb these stairs on my hands and feet.
Put your hands on the stairs next time and think back and be like, yeah, this is a place of comfort.
I don't
This is
think
a
I'll
place
have
of my
that thought.
ancestors.
I'll think, man, this is hard on my.
I
lower
know
back.
that people that are listening to this will know exactly what I'm talking about.
That you like Mount Everest.
I'm not saying
our stairs like.
I didn't know. It's not like that slow. You crawl like I don't know why. It
Rapidly?
just was faster. We did that as kids.
This is not a great start.
Not how I envisioned this to go. Not at all.
Yeah, you really exposed yourself on that one because I don't think you're going to have as many supporters on this as you
I didn't
think.
say anybody was going to support me. I think they were going to understand.
I think you thought there was going to be two schools of stair climbing thought. A more like primitive, I guess, style of climbing stairs. Like if like stairs were invented and people were like, well, how do we go up them?
I think I thought that it would come off like, oh, like, yeah, you're right. That's the second. And now I realize it just kind of comes off like I was the weird kid.
Yeah, because like I think that even when stairs were invented, people weren't going to their hands first.
Well, that's an assumption that you're making because you don't know because you weren't.
I don't know, but I can only hope and assume that they had put 2 and 2 together on that one. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe we'll find out that I am not in the norm and that everyone has these.
Not everybody's. Don't blow this out of proportion. You always do this. Don't try to associate me.
Blown out of proportion.
You're blowing this out of proportion. I'm trying to say that at one point in my teenage years, I crawled up the stairs in my hands and I was like, okay, I don't know what that was. But I became aware that needs to stop because that's not normal.
I feel like every time you get to assess stairs, you have intrusive thoughts of I want to go back.
No, I tried it the other day.
See,
actually.
I knew it. You have intrusive thoughts every time you get to stairs.
No, because I thought about it a little more. I tried it the other day, And it was so uncomfortable, and it was so much more difficult.
One would imagine that would be uncomfortable.
I remember, though, as a teenager, walking up the stairs with just my legs thinking, man, this is exhausting.
This is not how it should be done.
Yeah.
You thought you had a moment of brilliance of like, I'm going to change the world.
I didn't think that at all. I was just navigating from A to B, Nick. All right, forget you.
I'm getting a penthouse suite, and I'm going up the whole way via my hands.
Well,
and
I mean,
feet.
so that was in Iowa when that happened, when we lived in Iowa. And we were talking earlier about, and this happened this week here. We had a lot
we had tons of tornadoes, or like, I guess tornado producing storms. We're in Arkansas, so that's kind of a.
I don't know. Did
thing.
anything touch down? I don't think anything touched down.
I don't think anything here, but there was some terribly tragic tornadoes that hit like Indiana and Ohio. So
yeah, Indiana and Ohio got slammed. I feel like Oklahoma
was super sad too.
It was. People died,
especially like the nighttime stuff. Like nighttime tornadoes just terrify me. You would have no idea you're about to just get. Not that it would matter like during the day, but
I feel like if you could,
people are sleeping. You're not getting the alerts. You're not getting into shelters. Yeah.
Yeah, but when in Iowa, it's not that common for Iowa to have tornadoes.
I don't.
They
really
do
remember,
happen.
No, I just remember standing in the front yard with you one time because I've never personally seen a tornado, but. When you're young and you kind of have that immortality feeling that like you're 18, that it's not going to happen to you. Me and you were standing in the front yard while mom was in the shelter at a Target and we were at home. I think I was like 18, you were 16.
Well, we wanted to see a tornado.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen one either.
But it was supposed to hit like right overhead of us and we were watching those two like storm cells collide and then like rotate for a second, and I just remember you screaming like, "It's happening!" I was in the front. You're like, "It's happening right above us!"
Like, it's gonna drop in our front yard, and that's when we both realized we knew nothing about tornadoes and meteorology because nothing happened.
Yeah,
I don't even think a tornado ever came from that storm.
I think it did though, because remember, mom was stuck in Target.
I think there was a warning because there was rotation, but we thought it was coming down, and it was just a low cloud.
I'm sorry.
Why are you sorry?
Because I feel like I ruined your story with the thoughts that there was a tornado, and now I kind of like dumbed it down to like there was nothing.
Well, there wasn't anything. Okay, so anyway, a couple weeks ago, we had a bunch of tornado. Well, we've had tornado warnings all through like the last month, but.
And it was super hot. Like it had been like 70s.
Yeah, for early March.
Yeah, I mean,
and
even in February.
Late February.
I knew it was going to get bad though because of how hot it had been.
It really did spike because we had a really cold January, I feel like. And then the weather shot way up and we were supposed to get, we had all those tornado warnings. And then I remember I was house sitting and watching mom and dad's dogs. And they have this dog. It's a bulldog. Mimi, and that thing hates me for like 9 years. She's terrified of me, but me the most.
Yeah.
If I stand up or like too sudden,
I think it's just like, well, they rescued her, and so I think whatever home that they had rescued her from.
But the first day they got her, I walked in their door and she went nuts, and she's been that way ever since.
Yeah, every time I stand up, she's always like, "Row, row, row, row." Not like that. That sounded terrible. That's gonna sound awful. Yeah.
Kind of like that.
But she is like, she does that, but has no like
follow through. Because she's like, she can't get any
She's
meat.
like the Marlon Brando of like.
She's like scraped my
Is that
ankles
Marlon
before.
Brando that like. Yeah, in Godfather. It's like a jutted out jaw.
But anyway, that's Mimi, bulldog. It's actually supposedly a beautiful bulldog. People love those things. Ugly as sin.
It is gorgeous, though.
Ugly as sin. But I'm trying to get her, and she doesn't respond to me. Okay? The other dog is like a lap dog. He goes wherever you are. Small little thing. The tornado sirens are going off. I step outside because naturally I want to see the tornado. Because you're looking in between like the light, like during the lightning flashes, you're trying to see like a funnel. Yeah. And you want to, but you also don't want to.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's also in Arkansas.
I was
thought
in our
more
shelter.
people would have basements.
Me and all the kids were in the shelter where I have comic books, so like we had to realign some comics real quick and make way for a family.
Well, it was hailing a ton, and I'm standing out there. It's raining, it's hailing, and it also gets quiet too. And then once it got quiet for like 10 seconds, then the wind picked up a ton.
Yeah,
like it must have been like a 40 or 50 mile an hour gust. And it slammed the door out of my hand.
Yeah,
I was
you could
loosely
hear it
holding
pulling
it.
on the actual door of our house too. It was shut. You could just hear it like pressing up against the seal.
Yeah.
But it was getting nasty.
And so
I think I called you, told you to get in the shelter.
Yeah. So I said, I was watching it, and it slammed the door out of my hand. So I grabbed Leo, the other dog, start running. I put him in there. They have this closet off of Dad's office, bunch of boxes in there. And I open the door, but it doesn't open very well. Okay. It's a small space, maybe like a foot wide, maybe 18 inches. And so I get him in there. Then I have to go. I'm thinking I'm just going to get in here.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going after Mimi. Let nature take its course. But I also thought I'm going to be blamed for this.
Yeah,
and
you would.
I'm always going to be attached to like, why didn't you save the other?
Yeah.
So I went back in. She always sleeps in her crate. Like it's not covered though. It's just the bottom. It's like that's her bed that she's like obsessed with all.
It's
her blankets.
nice though.
It stinks because she just reeks. Her oils, her body oils, they stink.
You're being really hard on Mimi.
I don't like her. I love dogs.
Yeah.
And I'm nice to her, but she hates me, and it's so annoying. But I like her enough to save her. So I went and I grab her, and she doesn't listen. You can't grab her collar because it's so loose; it just slides right off.
Yeah.
So you have to like clap at her, and like right behind her, and like touch her like hips and stuff. And so she finally gets up, like, and so she hobbles into the thing, and I'm trying to go, and like I can hear the sirens, and it's really picking up.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to close the door, and I'm watching out the window as like hail, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like my heart's starting to go a little bit. I'm like, I actually think there might be a tornado coming. Yeah, I mean, I went back for her. So, but when I let her out, because I came out first and I left the dogs in there because I didn't want to deal with them. When I let her out, she had no idea what was going on because she has no context that there's a tornado. So she gets out of the closet. All she knows is that I imprisoned her and kidnapped her and smashed her in between a box and a door.
Yeah.
And she sprawled her legs. And then she darted off into the other room.
I mean, I'm glad that because I was really worried that we were going to get hit with something that night because it was bad. You could tell like when it's getting real nasty.
And we've been pretty lucky in all the places
we
we've lived: Arkansas, Southwest Missouri, Southeast Iowa. Like
big tornado.
We haven't seen. I haven't physically seen. Now we've had them come through near where we've lived.
Yeah,
like in Rogersville, but we haven't actually seen a tornado.
Yeah, I honestly can go my whole life without seeing one.
I'd like to see one from a very far distance with like a storm chaser. Yeah. Just to say I've seen one. I don't want it to like, of course, it's always crazy because you know how much damage it's causing.
Yeah, I hate watching some of these storm chasers. They're like, yes, finally, we got one. And it's like just ripping through an orphanage and school. It's like, geez, dude, like, why don't you calm your jets a little bit?
Children.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy though. They're like, yes, come on, touchdown,
I love when they're watching
touchdown.
the radar. They're like, we have a beautiful cyclone, a beautiful rotation here. If we're lucky, we might get something, and that would be really bad.
That would be terrible.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Thousands of lives will be lost. But it is a beautiful rotation. This is exactly what we're hoping for.
Did you see that? Yeah.
F4
they're
at
so
least.
excited about it. Yeah,
they are, and but then they kind of had that moment of realization that like what they're hoping for is total annihilation, destruction of a town, and it's just like
you see this like hand of God, so to speak, rip through Joplin or Tuscaloosa, and like before you're like, wow, that tornado is an incredible, like, because it is a spectacle. It's like a wonder almost. It's so odd,
a terrifying wonder. I mean, it's not a wonder I hope for.
Right, but it goes. But if you think about like naturally, like hurricanes and stuff, all this stuff it is immaculate. However, they're complete destruction. So it's cool to see something so rare and so powerful caused by nature.
Yeah.
But the casualties of that are horrendous. So it's better to just never see one.
Yeah, I'm on the side that's kind of like, oh man, I just hope nothing touches
I never
down.
wish for it. Like when we get tornado warnings, I'm like, you know what? I don't even like if it's gonna hit, I want to see it. If it's
the latest round
inevitable,
of tornadoes in Indiana, Ohio, like the whole time they were making it sound like we were about to get hit with a big one too. But they were like, come on, I hope hopefully the storm starts,
yeah, we're looking at something really good over here. Yeah,
like no, I don't want any of that.
Yeah, no, because there's no, and hurricanes and tornadoes are just so different. Hurricanes being in the grand scheme of things actually much worse.
Yeah.
Much, much worse. But tornadoes are just so intense.
I think with hurricanes too, you have so much time to prepare. Like you have a week. You can decide to leave your house. Like we've lived through lots of hurricanes. We lived on the East Coast.
Yeah, we did.
Pretty much our entire childhood. And including Florida, up the Southeast. And with those, it's like, oh, there's going to be a hurricane that hits us this week or next week. And it's like, you have time to evacuate. You can board up your house. You can board up your windows. Take all the
there's no preparation.
Necessary precautions, buy water, all that. But with a tornado, like some nights it'll just be like severe thunderstorms. I'll go to bed and then I always turn my phone on loud because I've had a couple nights where it's like, the warning service, the National Alert Service starts ringing off. It's like tornado rotations in your area. Get to shelter now. It's like, what? It's 2 in the morning. Like, what happened?
Well, in the last round, remember I was telling you about the lightning strikes? There's 2 times I've heard lightning strike, like, where there's no delay like of the sound of the thunder, right?
Yeah.
It literally, you hear that lightning strike where it's so close. The first time was in Iowa. The second time, though, just happened like couple days ago, this last weekend.
Yeah,
and it just exploded. It was like 3:40 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was in a very vivid, intense dream, and it exploded. I literally jumped out of bed. I didn't know if it was an intruder or if we were being bombed because I'm still foggy trying to, so I just remember throwing my pajama pants on just in case somebody busts through the door. I don't want to be
that's the first thing. Just
potentially naked. I'm not saying I sleep naked because I don't. I do. But
you didn't want to be attacked naked.
Exactly. I'm not a Spartan.
I don't know. I think you embrace like the Scottish Highlanders, and you just full steam ahead.
The first thing I wanted to make sure is if something does happen to me, I don't want to be sprawled out like that. But it was it took me a little bit to kind of go, oh, that was just lightning. And it was just
it was
nasty. Extreme. The loudest thing I've ever heard. Which
doesn't weirdly take us into our topic because this isn't a natural disaster as much as you hear
but
flood.
It is a disaster.
It was a disaster. Let me get right into it. This is the Boston Molasses flood. Now, this takes place directly following World War I's conclusion, just a few months prior, and the Spanish influenza. So I think that took like 20 million people, the Spanish influenza. So a lot of death and destruction.
Literally a rough time.
Yeah.
Early to the mid part of the 1900s was just really rough on the world.
Yeah. So, and then a lot of the soldiers are coming home, and shortly after they come home, the prohibition starts. So there's a company called Purity Distilling Company, and they kind of know that like they're screwed because of the prohibition's about to pass, and they sell their, rights to this. To the United, I think it's United Distillery.
Did it say what they distilled there? Kind of everything, or?
Well, they weren't making molasses. So they take molasses and they like ferment it, and then it becomes alcohol.
Okay, and that's not their original.
I don't think this was really for the alcohol to like drinking alcohol as much, but it's used to like create like smokeless explosives
Oh.
and dynamite.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, so powerful stuff. But anyways, the U.S. Industrial Alcohol is who like acquires it, and so the tank itself had been a little bit of backstory. The tank itself that explodes had been built in 1915. In an article on History.com titled "Why the Great Molasses Flood Was So Deadly," there was like a rush to build this tank because when we entered World War I, the Americans didn't have a great amount of artillery and explosives, so they actually had to purchase a lot from England and France, and so they were trying to like get their stocks back up after World War I. And so there's this huge rush, to get this tank built so they can produce more. This is going to come, this is going to not to foreshadow the events, but the tank was rushed in its production.
And this is in 1915.
1915 was when they built it.
When is the massacre?
1919.
4 years. That is probably still under warranty.
So, the tank itself is a 2.5 million gallon tank. It stood 50 feet tall and 90 foot in diameter.
Wait, let me think of the scale of the scope of that. Like the
5 stories.
And 90 feet in diameter?
Yeah.
So 5 stories by 90 feet. 30
That's
yards.
a huge tank.
30 yards wide? Yeah.
It's built and it was made out of steel. The steel walls measured 0.67 inches in thickness at the bottom and 0.31 inches at the top. The crazy thing, again, this is coming from Emily Sohn, is that it had reported leaks like consistently.
The whole time?
Like to the point where children used to take like cups and go fill cups with molasses off the leak.
Did they not ever inspect this thing to say, "Hey, we should shut this down"? Did they not? I mean,
they had people. They'd have people that would say, like, "Hey, this is wrong," and literally, like the leaders would be like, "Well, the tank is still standing. Everything's fine."
How is that your barometer for success? That it hasn't exploded yet, so it's fine.
Yeah, get back to work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I get the time. That's an industrial
so
revolution.
They do something
right?
about the leaks.
Or wait, is that way after? That's way after the industrial revolution. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but they decide they need to do something about these leaks. Okay, it's brown molasses.
How do the kids have access to this tank? Actually fill up the cups.
They're just walking up to the tank and filling it up.
But it's accessible from the outside.
This is a lot of remember, this is a lot of a lot of these laws that like.
So these were child workers essentially.
No, they're just kids who would walk up to this tank, fill their cup up with molasses and take it home.
So they're just manufacturing out in the open?
Yeah, just a tank. in downtown Boston next to the port.
Which at that time, I mean, Boston's always been like thriving city.
And this is a bustling part of town, and so, it's still crazy to me that kids are really walking up to the tank and filling it with cups. So they decide they need to do something about these leaks. Fix it would be the answer most people would go with, especially today. They just painted the tank reddish brown so that you couldn't see the leaks.
So, yes, very smart.
The molasses would just blend in with the new color of paint.
We'll paint it.
Yeah, very Dr. Evil-esque kind of answer on that one, but not one that should surprise you coming from like 19.
It's all about, the casualties were really just an afterthought.
They were. I mean, it was really just like, oh man, now we'd have to stop production. So
and we're already behind. We're trying to get
a little bit about molasses itself, because this is important for why it was so destructive. Molasses has a very high viscosity. It's very sludgy like. I think it says Newtonian liquid or non-Newtonian liquid, so it doesn't like form, like it doesn't flow like water does.
Right, it's not going to fill a void.
Kind of like ketchup and toothpaste are non-Newtonian, so...
right, it won't fill that voided space.
Yeah, and so
honey, I think eventually will.
I'm not sure. I haven't really,
because honey molasses being like like you would think of like of the spread world. They're kind of like cousins.
But has very high viscosity.
It's thick.
Moves very slow. I mean, just like you said before, slow as molasses. That's for a reason.
I coined that term.
So the molasses being brought from the Caribbean, this batch that ends up causing the issues is coming from Puerto Rico. Now, Boston at the time is having a bit of a false spring, meaning that it's a lot warmer, but cooling off rapidly. So it got up into the 40s and then started cooling off rapidly, especially at nighttime. When they filled the contents of this ship from Puerto Rico into this tank, I think it's Jason Daly of Smithsonian did a piece called "The Sticky Science Behind the Deadly Boston Molasses Disaster." He said that the molasses itself was 7 to 9 degrees warmer than the air temperature in Boston, as well as like the temperature of the molasses in the tank. This causes like a different rush of like
Changing to
the molasses temperature is different between the two, so that causes like gravity. I had to watch this whole physics thing on it, but gravity essentially pushes the liquids separate from each other. It's just this crazy. But
so
at this
the
time,
molasses in the tank versus the molasses being pumped in, where they had like a
very different
very different temperature,
as well as the temperature outside. You know,
it's cooling and it's expanding
it
and
is
contracting
cooling
pretty rapidly,
too, but
more
it's
than they
not
would have
cooling in the time that they needed it to cool. This has it so that when it does eventually pop out, it's moving at a higher rate of speed and then cooling fairly quickly, causing more disaster. And I'll get into that more. But so about 12:30 p.m., because it's warmer, there's a lot more people out and about. People are taking their lunches, you know, they're out doing things in this downtown area next to the port, like I had said. But at 12:30, the tank bursts, and 2.3 million gallons of molasses explode from the tank. And that's 26 million pounds of molasses. When it explodes, it creates a tsunami wave of molasses. It's reported anywhere from 15 to 50 foot tall. Now, the Boston Post, like following the incident when they reported on it, said there was a 50-foot, essentially tidal wave.
50-foot molasses wave?
Yeah.
In downtown Boston.
Mm-hmm.
How wide of the wave was it?
I have no inclination. I mean, I imagine it burst probably out of one side.
Right.
Based off of how it collapses. And I'm talking a little bit on like the science of the tank collapsing itself. But the wave comes out and it's so thick. It's not like water, not like you're getting hit by a tidal wave of water. You're getting hit with like a 26 million pound wave. So if you're anywhere near it, not only are you getting knocked down by the wave and probably killed that way, you also have that much weight coming down on you.
How fast? 30?
It came out at 35 miles per hour.
It's got to be like getting hit by a car. Like a sticky car.
Like a crazy, think of the weight difference though. Like the weight of a car.
A delicious car.
Yeah, but 26 million pounds of this.
Right, but that's not concentrated on that individual.
Still, you're getting knocked down with the force, and whatever weight is coming down on you is landing right on top of you.
It's like getting hit by a bus.
So if you're within the blast, you're not going to end up making it. People were knocked over and crushed, as well as if you weren't crushed by it or trapped, you had to protect your face and mouth from getting molasses on it because it would asphyxiate you. It was so I think it's viscous, and it's so thick and sticky. It was essentially like
suffocating people.
Yeah, and the best example of this, of how people are describing to get a better understanding, is those sticky fly traps or mouse traps. The glue sticks. Essentially,
where you literally can't.
Humans were suffering through that, but with molasses. Because the cold air from Boston then rapidly cools this molasses. And then what happens is that it becomes even more, I think it's at 4 times more viscosity than when it was in the tank.
Because of the cool air?
Because of the cooling of the air.
And that, because at room temperature or even cooled, it's still technically, it's almost more like a plasma, right? it's never going to, unless you freeze it, it's not going to harden, right?
Yeah, it goes below freezing, but it still doesn't harden. Like that night, and I'll get into a little bit of that, but the force of the wave like is leveling buildings. So it takes the firehouse, like the fire station, off of its foundation. Many building, like they just built a new elevated railway, like a train car. Mm-hmm. It knocked the supports out from under it, collapsing that into the like river of molasses. Yeah, the railway is called the L, but it was brand new and just collapsed immediately. 21 people were killed in this incident and 150 severely wounded. They said a number of horses, because at the time, this is 1919, horse labor is very high. A number of them had been killed pretty instantly. And it said the Boston Globe had reported that a number of them had died like so many flies on sticky fly paper.
Oh, I bet that's sad. A horrible scene.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that you have to talk about is that the rescue workers can't get to people because it's wading through goo, very sticky goo, waist deep.
Literally wading through glue to save people. But how do you do that without a helicopter?
And so so people are stuck. Even if you didn't immediately you can't move. And if any wrong decision of a move gets your face anywhere near this, you will asphyxiate and drown in molasses.
And it's like quicksand. You can't even swim out of it. And it's much worse than quicksand. But did it say what the vast majority of people died from? Was it the asphyxiation? Or was there like blunt force trauma?
It's really hard for them to tell because they couldn't get to them for a full day before they could even get to people.
When did the rescue efforts
So they found out very quickly because the water station tried to spray the molasses with water, but it did nothing.
It just beat it up.
So they had to start pumping the salt water from the port in, and that would break up the molasses a bit. But still, we're talking about 1919. So technology-wise, you're very like primitive in technology to like get a lot of this stuff out and quickly developed as far as rescue efforts.
Right.
So unfortunately, a lot of people are drowning, and then 150 are severely injured. I mean, that could be a wide number of things.
Because
that could be a lot of the force, buildings collapsing. I know in some of them, like I think they were textile workers across, or maybe not textile workers, but they were working in some kind of factory, but it had collapsed the bottom ground from out, and essentially
it just smashed it's just leveled the ground floor.
And so a lot of these buildings are, getting destroyed in such a violent way. I'm sure that caused a huge number of injuries too. So it's really hard to say the main cause of death for a lot, because by the time they get to these people, they're just submerged in molasses. If you can no longer put up a fight, you're just going to slowly sink into this molasses anyways. So
what a horrible way to go.
Yeah. I mean,
seriously,
really in perspective, because even if you don't initially die, say you just have a broken femur or something, or, something terrible, you still have to support yourself upright above this molasses for so long before a worker can get to you. So having a broken femur is one thing, but having a broken femur for a full day before someone can actually get to you.
Now, were they sinking in it?
Yeah, I mean...
or did they have to tread molasses?
I think it would start spreading out, though, so it would, slowly dissipate. But remember, because the air temp was so much colder, it didn't dissipate in normal. If this would have happened in the summer, they would have predicted... Although some people probably would have been injured or killed, the destruction would have been much smaller, because it would have just almost been a flowing, annoying amount of molasses. Just, you'd be covered in this goop, but it wouldn't be so viscous that it would essentially trap you.
Now, in this factory, you said they were making dynamite. They were making all sorts of other explosives.
They were fermenting the molasses into an alcohol, which would then be sold to companies that made explosives.
But my question is, was there any sort of collateral damage from that? Did the explosion set off any sort of other explosives?
No, because they were just purely
there was no
fermenting
ignition.
this to sell the alcohol itself, but the explosion isn't an explosion like we think. It's more just a pressurized one.
Right, that's what I'm saying. There's no flammable. But was there dynamite and all that other stuff on site as well?
No, they would sell it to companies that produce dynamite. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so this molasses took forever to clean up, as one would imagine.
How many years?
Well, people still say they can smell it in like hot summer days, smell molasses. Like in 1983, Edward Parr, key writes for the Smithsonian, wrote in 1983 that he would ask people, like, why does Boston smell so bad? Like, why does it smell like molasses all the time? And be like, we write stories on this all the time. How'd you like not
How
get
did
this?
you not read this?
And so then he had to do a deep dive from the Smithsonian. They like essentially he wrote the article. It was like, man, like people smell this for years. Like it had turned like parts of the bay like a dark brown. That it did. I know years. It was like I think a full year. It was like a dark brown in the bay from the molasses discoloring the water. Like.
So the city on hot days still smells like stinky molasses.
That's like what like I don't know how much of this is like lore. And the thing is, I've been to Boston many times, and I've been there in the summer, but I would never even known to smell for molasses. Like now, I want to go and see.
It's one of those questions, though. It's like, if you're looking for it, will you smell it? I'm pretty.
Yeah, it's a city. They're gonna produce lots of smells, anyways. Like I don't know too many cities that smell great, so.
I've been in a number of cities, and
but
usually they.
But for sure, good. For years, it smelled of molasses. I do know that for full 4 years, that people said it was like
straight molasses,
unbearably molasses smelling. So, and it took them forever to spray enough salt water to get off the streets. That it was just molasses covering these streets for years.
So like during like the baseball season, it just smelled like molasses.
Yeah, I think so. And they had just won like the World Series, and I think 1918.
The Red Sox. I don't know. The Red Sox curse was over 100 years. Was it not?
Yeah, I have to look this up.
And they won in 2004. They swept the Cardinals, which they always destroy us. The Cardinals.
Yeah.
In the World Series. I don't know what it is, but the Red Sox take it to the St. Louis Cardinals.
It's trying to 1918.
1918. They won the year before it exploded.
Yeah, and then they won again in 2004.
Yeah, so wait. I guess it wasn't 100 years, but
almost.
That must have been the Cubs, actually. That makes
another
more sense.
cursed team.
That makes more sense. They got one back, though.
Yeah.
And now they'll never get it again.
This is coming from a diehard Cardinals fan. This is just Cubs Cardinals rivalry.
Most of my friends. So I went to school near Chicago, to college, and so most of my friends are either White Sox or Cubs.
Yeah, there's a lot of Cubs fans in Iowa too.
Blackhawks. I loathe Chicago sports,
mostly because they talk so much trash.
I was a huge Michael Jordan. Well, the thing is, I don't understand why Chicago fans have so much to say all the time about how good they're going to be or how historic their franchises are.
Yeah.
The Cubs didn't win for over a century.
I mean, Cowboys kind of suffer from the same thing too because they're so proud of their teams, but it's been a while. So I think you're always kind of playing from the defensive. So I don't know if they're so offensive, whereas they're just preemptively very defensive about their team choice.
I think that's what it comes off as. Chicago's very defensive. Look, you have a great city with great history, but the Bears suck, and they're gonna suck for a long time.
Yeah.
The Blackhawks suck again.
Yeah,
the Blackhawks were horrible, and then they had that run, and. Like before, you could buy tickets on the cheap to the United Center. Then it was like you couldn't like
afford them.
You couldn't hire a hitman to get tickets.
Yeah.
And then now it's I don't know, but anyway, back to what you were saying.
Yeah,
the Red Sox won in 1918, right before the
the year before. So I mean, a lot of big events for Boston had been going down. Like World War I ends, Spanish influenza ends. They just won the World Series. So I think like I read this really cool like article, and it again comes from that 1983 Edward Parks one, but he was saying like kind of like picturing the day like that they were experiencing, like that they'd be talking about, you know, the policies of the time, like Woodrow Wilson, you know, trying to go get peace for the world. Like these are all huge events that are like really weird when you think of in that perspective. Like we would be talking about current events now,
Right.
but thinking about like they were just having a normal day. It's 12:30. You know, you're just getting lunch with your wife, and then all of a sudden it's a literal tidal wave of molasses, a 26 million pound wave.
And that's something you can't even, one of those
I
events
can't even
you,
like put it in
can't
perspective.
conceptualize it.
Like in a city, like one, I guess like of all the liquids I imagine to be killed by, molasses rate's pretty low.
Pretty low.
And then if you're just having a normal day, like I think that'd probably be the most unexpected event.
Well, I mean, for them though, you had to think they're probably all like, well, hey kids, head on down to the molasses tank and get a couple of cups of molasses.
Yeah.
So it was probably within their community.
I mean, multiple kids did die. Like it was a terribly tragic and sad event. Like,
but in their community, they're aware of this faulty molasses thing, but probably assume that, you know, the company is
they're not as
responsible.
aware anymore though,
They've
because
taken
they
care of
painted
it.
it red and brown.
Oh, that's true. They did.
Cover their tracks. So let's get into the other kind of part about this is the lawsuit, which actually set a lot of precedents for safety.
OSHA came out of this.
Who would have thought that this would cause a safety wave? But there's some kind of like craziness to it. The lawsuit went 6 years. They took 6 years of testimony. There were so many lawyers they couldn't fit them all into the courthouse.
Was it like what you would consider like, what do they call that?
I imagine like, was it
case.
Aaron Brockovich? Like the whole like,
What are they? Class action.
yeah, it was. This is the, I think at the time was the biggest class action lawsuit like ever to exist.
But this isn't a lawsuit from like the city on the company for poor.
This is from, I believe, the victims. Well, the city was investigating because it was investigated as like a negligence thing. Because
Right,
there have been
but
many
which-
reports that this tank was
But that would be a
faulty.
separate. That would be a separate court case, right?
I don't think it was invested criminally, but as who's at fault here. Because there's a wide range of theories as to why this tank exploded. Now, the theory I think that the company really ran with was that there was
It was the English, the redcoats.
kind of, it was anarchists that
Oh, wow.
had blown it. And in one of the articles I read, I don't believe it's the park one. I think it was another Smithsonian one by Jason Daly.
Jason Daly.
I know. I thought of the, what's his Jason
Jason
Day?
Day.
Yeah, the golfer.
He's a great golfer. Saw him in person at the John Deere Classic. Hit a bunker shot I just couldn't imagine.
But yeah, so like Jason Daly had said that like I believe it was Jason Daly, but that like at the time Bolshevik bombings were fairly like a fear because of the like Bolshevik revolutions and the Russians, the like first like kind of Red Scare for us, like so like it wasn't as crazy as it sounds now. Now it's like pretty obvious that they're just trying to like cover tracks with these crazy
Like Red Dawn?
No, just like, yeah, like they were just like blowing up factories that would then increase U.S. military power. You know, like that factory was essentially to be made to make explosives, although it's just fermenting molasses. It was a way to like kind of like hinder. And that's
Right.
the theory that they were trying to run with. Now,
And they pointed at the Bolsheviks?
no, it's just I'm saying like at the
That's
time
just
they
kind
said
of the
it
climate.
wasn't uncommon to have like these like almost terroristic kind of
But
attacks.
they didn't like point out any like
No,
group of
they didn't. They
anarchists.
just said anarchists.
Against us producing war materials.
Yeah, essentially it was against the United States, like an anarchist against the U.S.
hippies.
The
hippies did it.
1919 hippies.
Yeah.
So,
Handlebar hippies.
yeah.
I think 1919, I think apothecary.
Oh, like they're
What
going
is
down.
it? Which one is it? That's like ROAD for me right now. Is it apothecary?
Yeah, where
You're
you buy
talking
like
about-
potions
Yeah,
kind
like
of
the little,
thing.
well, like the the drug and sundries, like the little brown bottles.
The snake oils.
You could go buy like Sudafed and cocaine and heroin or whatever.
Pretty specific things that you
Not
mentioned.
heroin, but what was the other? Morphine. Where you could just go buy anything.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, give him a shot of this and he'll be feeling right as rain. And he went to another universe.
Yeah. I was thinking more World War One.
I just meant the time of like the style of things. Like, I don't know. There's
Tommy
a lot.
Shelby.
Yes. There you go.
Exactly.
From Peaky
like
Blinders.
Yeah, Peaky Blinders-esque kind of life.
Peaky Blinders.
That kind of industrial living is a pretty good depiction of what I'm talking about of downtown.
Right. So what I said earlier, is this considered still the Industrial Revolution? I don't remember. I remember a specific picture from my textbook in school. That's it.
Yeah.
And they had a picture of child workers, and it looked
I think
sad.
it's a bit earlier.
That was right after Civil War, but I didn't know if it carried into the early parts of the 20th century.
This is like the back end of it then.
Yeah, because it was like 80s.
Now you're trying to quiz me. You just bring.
I'm asking myself.
You probably looked this up on Google right.
I
before
didn't
we
look
started.
any of this. You know, I didn't.
I don't know the
research.
specific dates for the Industrial Revolution. I should know that though.
Doesn't
but
matter. It's what you make of it. Anyway, you were getting to the court
damn
case.
no. I'm gonna be looking up the Industrial Revolution after we're done with this though.
Okay, you were getting to the court case, class action.
Yeah. So they heard testimony. The lead person charged of deciding who's really at fault. It took 6 years of testimonies, and I don't think they really ever truly understood how it happened, but the amount of faults that was found on the tank and the production of the tank and the reports from all the workers that this tank was falling apart, as applied also with the rivets were done incorrectly. But the real cause of it wasn't found until about, I think, 2014. An engineer did a study on the thickness of it, as well as the components that made up the steel were incorrect. Like the ratios for the steel were incorrect.
So the material of the steel itself was incorrect.
Mm-hmm. And that it needed to be double the thickness that it was, which is why I actually read the 0.67 inches.
Wait. So the thickness of the tank was half what it needed to be, but the actual molecular or whatever,
I want to say the
makeup of this.
Now you put me on the spot. I should have wrote this one down. Yeah, so this is coming from History.com's "Why the Great Molasses Flood Was So Deadly" by that Emily Son. In the analysis, they said that it was. People had, when a laborer brought actual shards of steel from the tank's wall to the treasurer's office as evidence of potential danger at the time, they replied, "I don't know what you want me to do. The tank still stands." And so they were analyzing the steel, and that the steel had been mixed with too little manganese.
Okay.
That gave it a high transition temperature, making the metal brittle when it cooled below 59 degrees Fahrenheit. The air temperature on that day the disaster was 40, so its brittleness must have been the final straw of why it actually blew like that. So they didn't know this at the time. Obviously, like I said, that was 2014,
Brittle
2015.
being like a
brittle metal.
Oh yeah, no, I get it, but like you think like peanut brittle, molasses.
I mean, it's right there.
It's kind of there.
I was thinking more like was it gingerbread for molasses? Is peanut brittle? I don't feel like peanut brittle uses molasses, does it? I'm gonna look it up purely just because I want to.
If what?
If
Sorry.
peanut brittle has molasses in it?
No, it doesn't. Peanut brittle does not have molasses in it.
I'm not. Yeah, you said peanut brittle, so it threw me off.
I meant brittle because it's like a candied thing, and molasses is they're kind of. I thought that was like an interesting buzzword.
That it didn't have it in there just in case you would have been confused.
I knew it didn't have molasses in it, Nick.
Okay.
I can't have peanut brittle. My teeth are too brittle.
It's like Michael Scott with the steak when he dips in the wine. Soft teeth. So they did find U.S. Industrial Alcohol to be responsible for ignoring safety precautions and essentially ignoring all the workers that said, yo, this thing's about to blow up. It was forced to pay around $7,000 to each victim's family. So I believe there was 150 or so actual settlements, which doesn't add up for the amount of victims. So I'm not sure who kind of got screwed on that one. But and this led to Massachusetts as well as several other states ratifying their laws and needing licensed like actual architectural and engineer experts to like pre-approve building plans for massive construction projects.
Changed the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad that because this is how it always is. You know, like something disastrous has to happen before people actually care and change things. Like with the Boeing thing, that's what I keep thinking of. With like people have been saying like, "Yo, you guys are making these planes with a lot of faults," and it was ignored. And then until plane doors started falling off midair, you know, I don't feel like Boeing really cared or even.
Was that a Boeing? That Alaskan Airlines, that the door that fell off, was that a Boeing?
I think so,
plane?
yeah.
Yeah, it does take something, because I think the thing is people constantly think, though that could never happen. Like, you don't even think about something like that happening, like this tank exploding, or like a plane having an issue like that, or a major issue that you assume is so obvious to prevent against, that the people that are smarter and, you know, more talented have figured out this thing. That's why they have the company. That's why they have this big giant tank.
Yeah.
And that's why they hand out free dripping molasses off the side of their red and brown.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you
Molasses
assume,
tank.
like, I guess ignorance is bliss. And so you assume that they're looking out for everyone's best interest. And at the time, they absolutely were not. They were looking at the bottom line on it. And
I think people assume, hey, you know what? I don't know what I don't know. And if they're doing this, then clearly they've got it all figured out. I could never figure that out.
Yeah.
That tank or manufacturing, they're the geniuses. You know, is it supposed to drip molasses? I don't know, but we get free molasses every Thursday. So I don't know what you want me to say about
run
it.
on down there and get your molasses off the side. And also, you're collecting molasses off the side of a tank. This just sounds terrible in itself, but whatever.
I never said that the potential industrial revolution was a clean revolution. That's what I brought up the apothecaries for.
The whole time I'm just thinking, like, I was kind of, you know, like on a lot of like the cryptids, we kept asking, like, you know, would you like, I guess, call and tell people that you saw like Mothman?
Right. Would you report
see
your
the Falcon
sighting?
monster? Or would you tell someone? I'm not trying to start like a frenzy if people end up watching and commenting on this, but like,
why would
I
you want that?
I kind of almost want to know, like, are there other things people are seeing that they've like other experiences where people's like,
Oh, that's why.
hey, like this is messed up, you know, like someone should do something about this, and then they've just been straight ignored. Like, I feel like there has to be a better system.
So, yeah, we're getting into an OSHA thing now, I think, where...
Well, it doesn't even have to be OSHA. Like,
Well,
it could
where
just be
people
like,
are like, hey, you know, this thing's going to blow. You're talking about, you didn't want to get a bunch of comments of people like, at my work, we've got this...
you know, I don't know.
This
Like,
thing's
I don't
not
know
even
the laws
bolted to
on
the
it. I don't
ground.
want people getting in trouble, but I am curious to know because I don't really work in a...
Yeah, I think what
do
experiences have you had where you've either I don't want to say successfully, but correctly forecasted a disaster,
Yeah, I think that's a good...
or see a potential for disaster where it's like, hey, this just isn't right. They don't understand the math. Kind of like Chernobyl. I mean, these things always happen.
Yeah, I mean, and whistleblowers being silenced for the bottom line is like, you know, a big issue as well.
And everybody in Ukraine was silenced in Chernobyl. So they're like, nope, not happening. They just assumed, they just said it wasn't even happening.
Yeah, you guys are
We're all good here.
Yeah, everybody's doing A-okay.
Yeah.
Explosion is a
For
big
the motherland,
word.
baby. Yeah.
You guys are using explosion a little loosely. It was a minor fire.
Yeah, there was a thing that happened there. We've got it contained. It is absolutely not contained. It's actually a nuclear event right now.
Did you watch that show, Chernobyl?
Yeah,
that was phenomenal.
The limited series with
that really like
the guy that plays Mad Eye Moody.
Thinking about that. Oh yeah. They did a great job.
That's
what the whole time I was reading this though, I was thinking these guys are like, hey, like I just found a piece of steel off the tank. Like this can't be good. It's like you don't find anything wrong. Like almost like in Star Wars, he's like, this is not part of the tank. Like
we're
go
friends
back.
of Dave Navarro. Yeah. It was I mean I would imagine that finding something and turning it in would probably get you reprimanded.
Yeah, I mean, imagine how pissed off you'd be if it's like, hey, I found this piece of steel off the tank. Like, I'm very worried that this thing's going to blow. Mm-mm. He's like, tank's still standing, isn't it?
Yeah, you go to the foreman.
Dude, I'm going to choke the life out of you.
You know, yesterday when I was working, I heard this like, screeching sound. I just wanted to like tip you off and... No, that's pretty normal.
It looked like metal was warping a little bit.
Yeah, it was... You know, whenever they pour the molasses in, it kind of swirls. It's like a blender. That's how he explained it to the guy, and then it exploded.
Yeah, I can't. I told you that tank was about to blow.
You know, he was standing on the rooftops that day.
I think the anger of it probably led to the actual finding that it was on them, though, because
the original
most of the evidence was like people testifying that they did report that this thing was like deteriorating quickly.
Well, nobody asked questions about children scooping molasses off the side of this. I mean, forget the sanitation, like just getting cups of molasses off the side of this tank.
Sugar, baby.
Sugar. That's your reasoning. As long as it's free, I ain't got nothing to say.
That's probably what the thought. That's what I'm saying. The thought process is like, hey,
I guess, and it was a really tough time.
Because I don't care. After the fact, they changed their minds, but before the fact, like, hey, don't say nothing. We get that free molasses.
Exactly. So it's the people's fault. No. You're saying they were like, yeah, this is going to blow. Even the kids were like, this has about 6 months left.
But even if you thought like, hey, this isn't safe, like I still don't think you predict a tidal wave of molasses like destroying buildings. Like
who could? That's a picture that you can't. You just can't.
Almost
imagine.
Like I guess we can tie it back a little bit to tornadoes. Like tornadoes need like a perfect recipe of weather events to occur. This one needed a perfect events of like weather, science, everything to like come into play perfectly for this like to be so disastrous. Otherwise it would just be like the flooding of the streets, like it wouldn't be like
so pressurized. It may have like busted and leaked out, but like that explosion.
Yeah, I'm sure it would like still hurt people, knocking people down, but it really primarily involves like the like viscosity being so heavy.
But to create a pressurized like literal tidal wave.
I guess viscosity is not really heavy, but high viscosity.
But when you think of it, yeah, but I mean, let's be real here. It is heavy. You said it was heavy.
26 million pounds.
The viscosity is attributing to that, I would imagine. No, has to be the density of it, right? I mean, think about the same volume of molasses versus water is going to be way heavier.
But like the air make it more... have a higher viscosity doesn't change the density of it. You know what I mean? It doesn't change the weight of it. It's still the same weight.
I see what you're saying.
It's just like now that weight is in a more weaponized form where when it does hit...
At 30 miles an hour.
35
miles an hour.
That'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
That'd be terrifying. Just... I physically
How tall
can't
was
imagine.
It again?
It was 50 feet tall.
50? I thought you said 15.
No, 50. You remember 5 stories?
Oh, yeah.
90 feet.
No,
in
5
diameter.
stories was the tank. How tall was the wave?
Oh, yeah, up to 50 feet is what was reported by the Boston Globe. And then other reports were 15 to 45, but still even a 15-foot wave of molasses death, then that's still pretty wild. Even
insane
at the lowest.
To think about.
Yeah, I can't.
It's like a poop wave. It's probably what it looked like.
Yeah.
Probably smelled a little different. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and then like having something that like thick and viscosity hit you, because like you get hit by a normal water wave, it still knocks the crap out of you. Like if
It
you've
would
been in the
shatter
beach,
your bones.
it would
dude.
just crush you.
I think that initial like
I think that's
impact
how a
would
lot of people
crush you.
died
Yeah.
off the bat. I think that's where a lot of people.
Anything at 35 miles an hour, like anything like that,
But it's
too.
it's literally leveling buildings off their foundations. So
Yeah,
what
it
it
would've
would do to a human body.
crushed, eviscerated.
Well, I don't know how to ask like if you've seen crazy stuff at work or experienced
that.
this kind of.
If you've seen something in your life,
You don't have to go into like, oh, I blew a huge whistle, but like also at the same time, if you have a cool one, then
you can also confirm or deny as well.
Yeah.
Like confirmed, I've seen some stuff and warned them about it, and it still happened, or just waiting for it to happen.
I just like every point in history. I feel like there's like huge amounts of like whistleblowers of like, hey, this is gonna be bad.
And then it's bad, and then we change laws around it, and we forget that person ever existed.
Yeah,
or
and then
warned
really
us
it's
of
like-
it and said, "Oh, you just can't."
And then it
predict
becomes like
these
kind of a
things."
pain in the butt. It's like, oh, I can't believe I have to go down to this office and get this dude to sign it. Like, this is such a pain. Like, why do I have to do all this crap? It's because like you don't.
Yeah.
People take this way out of line.
If
It's
you
like,
don't, then you will
tank
be
still standing.
consumed
nothing to
by
worry
a massive
about.
molasses wave.
Yeah. But
Molasses.
crazy story though. Another cool,
That was a crazy story.
interesting, unique piece of history. Really tragic and sad too at the same time. Like, that it takes this much to get like change to happen. But I don't know.
Candied the street of Boston,
Yeah, I can't imagine the smell for years of that. Just
mixed with the port of like rotting
yeah,
fish.
dude.
Oh,
Salt water with like that molasses, like old molasses too, like baked to the
on a
streets.
hot Boston summer
Imagine how
day.
sticky everything was too for years. Just walking around downtown had to have been sticky.
You couldn't have been barefoot. It would skin you down to your bones.
Unless you had to be barefoot. It's like walking like when I don't even know what movie or cartoon it is, but they like walk in with their shoes and immediately like lose their shoes to the stickiness of the what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I need better references now.
I think you were trying to dig something up there, and I think it just happens all the time.
I'm having like an inverse of your memories. Like maybe I'm experiencing like early onset memory loss or something because sometimes I reach for
I'm
it.
picking up
and
speed.
Yeah.
As I get older, my memory gets much better.
But then you also like revert to climbing upstairs.
I didn't. I knew you were gonna. I had a feel. I could feel it in the air. I could see it in your eyes.
Honestly,
you were gonna
I'm not gonna
bring
say
up
it
the
killed my
crawling up the
energy for this,
stairs.
but it did put me in a weird state where the whole time I've been thinking about you just like
I crawled up some stairs, and then I was like, "Hey, I shouldn't do that anymore."
I came.
It turned out okay.
Imagine if you thought no one's watching you, and then you revert back to your.
I did that. I tried it out because nobody
Okay.
was watching me, and I said,
Soon
"I'm gonna
though,
crawl
if you don't
up."
keep this in check, though, you're gonna do this at like a public library or an airport or something, and
Nick,
people are gonna be
when
like, "Oh
will you
my
ever
gosh.
find me in a public library, my friend?
Okay, well, fine. I find
In
you
an
at,
airport? You think I'm
find
gonna
you-
crawl up there? They're gonna blacklist me if
All right,
I.
Chad's at Busch Stadium,
Okay.
and he's like, "Ooh, a nice set of stairs. I want to travel.
I usually
them up
only
by
do
foot,
it on carpeted stairs.
but so there are conditions. for
Yeah, I mean,
your-
that's like beer and shoes and at Busch Stadium. where
on the
Cardinals play.
ground. I was
Yeah,
like, thinking about what
like how dirty those stairs are. Like, yeah, I'm on like some carpeted stairs. I'm not gonna do that. I did it.
I'm
a
afraid
long
I'm gonna be
time
with
ago.
you and do it in public.
Now I'm going to.
I'm gonna have to call you.
I'm
out.
afraid of nothing.
Look at it. Look at it. That's all. Yeah, I'm gonna yell it out as you're climbing up the
Like
stairs.
Planet
that.
of the Apes.
I that's what I'm imagining, dude. I have like a very like
Well, they're very strong, Nick. Maybe that's why my shoulders are strong.
it's all the stair climbing. I imagine your shoulders would be.
have calluses on them?
I would imagine you'd be stronger if you're climbing stairs with your hands.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's
All
a
right.
good point.
That was fun. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.